You must rally the Horde and lead your people to their destiny.
And also don't let anyone die Thrall, cause that would be sad.
The survivor of Hath Sin has always prioritized living before anything else. And no matter what happens, it is every being's sacred duty to keep struggling to survive. How well does that translate for our TS games? Let's find out. Before though, we have to establish the rules. Rule number 1, none of my units can die. What counts as a unit? A unit is an entity that I can control. It has a health bar, and I can give it commands. Workers, heroes, army, and summons all count as units. Rule 1, subsection C, states that I cannot use any units with timed life, as when the timer runs out, that unit dies. Effectively, what this means is I cannot use summons. Rule number 2, structures are not units. Rule number 3, cutscene deaths do not count. Any death that occurs during a cutscene is not part of the run, as it is not part of the gameplay. Optional quest. Keep as many allied units alive as possible. This won't be a deal breaker for me, but if it's possible, I have to go for it. Note, by the way, I will be playing the campaign on hard. We're not going to do baby easy mode. Now some of you might be asking, what experience do I have? Well, you know, lad, I'm a top 50 Grandmaster. I play this game at a very high level. I pretty much have everything in this game memorized. Just kidding. If you want that, then go watch Grubby. I'm just some loser who's played the campaign before and plays the custom games. Like 90% of you watching, I'm sure. I don't have any multiplayer experience, neither do I know builds, or really the finer aspects of the entire video game. I know what abilities do and what units do, and I know that upgrades are good. Introduction aside, let's start our journey with the prologue. The first mission, Chasing Visions, sees us escorting Thrall through some checkpoints, and it's a tutorial on how to play the game. We get some grunts, fight some mobs, but overall, it's a very, very easy mission. Reminder, I'm not specking the Feral Wolves because of obvious reasons. Mission 2 of the prologue, Departures, sees us learning how to build bases, and gives us something that we'll be using for the rest of the run. Towers. Static defense is king in Warcraft, unlike StarCraft where they kind of just get shredded. Towers are so cost efficient for everything, and they destroy army, and they don't risk me losing the death run. Anyways, it's still a simple mission. We get some grunts, we run at the enemy. Obviously we micro back injured one. Overall, it's a breeze. Jumping into the human campaign, we meet Arthas, who never does anything wrong, as he's training with Uther. And of course, the orcs are just being the worst beings in existence. Arthas and Uther stare into each other's eyes longingly, then Arthas moves to deal with the orc. Anyways, as difficulties go, the first mission of the human campaign is absolutely easy peasy. It's a dungeon crawler-esque mission where we get comfortable with Arthas and his abilities. Holy Light is godsend, and it makes the micro side of this way easier, when I can just heal all the units who are low health. Devotion Aura is just as nice, giving all my units a constant armor buff. Both abilities are going to be critical for this run. Oh yeah, bye-bye Slaver. Next, in Blackrock And Roll, Arthas can't find his pacifier, and he realizes the orcs must have pranked him and stolen it. To be honest, you don't need a better excuse than that to go kill some orcs. We get to build our first human base, and might I add, human static defense is really nice later in the run with the health/armor upgrades you can get through the lumber mill. We go recruit some riflemen, kill some dragons, and scour the map before loot before moving on to the Blade Master. He's actually a little tricky to take down. If you AFK attack him, his Blade Storm will shred your footmen. Just have Arthas take the initial Blade Storm and focus fire, and it's a pretty solid fight. You might be curious for how I'm going to keep track of if a unit dies, as the stat screen for Reforged is worse than the one for the original game? Come on Blizzard, all I want is a unit's lost tab. I can still get around that though. What I do is look at supply. If it ever goes down below the number I repeat to myself, that's a reload. I also keep track of how many units I have. This isn't StarCraft. Keeping track of 6 footmen and 5 riflemen is pretty easy to do in your head. Also, I comb through the VOD after I record myself beating a mission and see if I missed anything. To my knowledge, I haven't. You kinda just gotta trust me on this one. I'm very attentive when it comes to this. If you want to see anything for yourself, I'll leave an unlisted, unedited VOD of every single mission I've played, and you can check for yourself. In Ravages of the Plague, we're introduced to Jaina Proudmoore. Jaina's initial ability, Summon Water Elemental, is one we obviously can't use. It's a decent damage sponge with okay DPS that has a timed life. I'll be leveling up Brilliance Aura for as much as possible. When against ranged units under static defense, I can now make my footmen raise their shields and use the Defend ability to reduce the damage of ranged attacks. On this mission, we also run into what I argue to be one of the best units in the human race, and for this run, we get Priests. These boys are heal bots, but for your entire crew, and pair well with Jaina's Brilliance Aura. I'll mention them again later when they get really good. Likewise, we get a Mortar team, and the AI really hates these guys, almost as much as I do. Anytime the Mortar team is attacking anywhere near the enemy units, all units will stop what they are doing and go attack them. The Mortar team themselves are slow and relatively low HP, but they're crucial for taking down any buildings. I just have to keep my eye on them. The AI does the same for all the siege units of every race. Anyways, the mission itself is pretty straightforward, but it's a good stepping stone for what micro will have to employ. In The Cult of the Damned, we get our first true base versus base fight, where we build our base and our troops while holding off enemy attacks to eventually get a force to kill their base. Initially, I start out with moving Arthas and Jaina to the right to secure some loot while I build up at home. That led to a few close calls, to say the least. After clearing out the right side of the map, I start focusing solely on building up my army so I can go attack the green undead base. However, in Warcraft, Defender's advantage is real, and pretty much every base is a tough egg to crack. Stack defense for both sides is ridiculous, and the mortar teams get targeted religiously. With enough hold position micro and mortar target firing, we can eventually clear out the green undead. This is going to be my approach for attacking bases for the next couple of missions. Afterwards, I move up to the top side of the map, save right before I kill Kel'Thuzad, and the mission's over. For March of the Scourge, we run into our first roadblock of the run. The very topical grain has been spread to the village, and the army defending it is not aware of what the plague is. After this very long cutscene, 4 of your units are at red health and are being attacked by village zombies. They're essentially one shot, and no amount of moving them / holy light usage can save them. I can't even say it's a cutscene death because it occurs during gameplay. There is, however, one trick up my sleeve. A very useful one. The Scroll of Healing. Let's rewind to the last mission. Remember to save before killing Kel'Thuzad. Make sure Arthas has 1 to 2, I prefer 2, Scroll of Healings in his inventory, and read which hotkey they're tied to. Don't worry about losing any items that Arthas has, you can just give them to Jaina and she'll drop them down for the next mission. Anyways, at the start of the mission, move Arthas into range of all the units and spam the hotkeys. This requires RNG to favor us. The zombies have what's known as swing damage. Every unit in the game does. They have a range of damage that can be low swing or high swing. For us right now, we need every single zombie to hit a low swing auto attack so they don't one-shot one of our units. Arthas isn't fast enough to press scroll in range of all of them before their first auto attack. Not too big of a deal, right? It's the beginning of the mission, just restart if it's not optimal RNG. True, but it is a little time consuming. I have to sit through the cutscene every single time. And if I skip the cutscene, for some reason, it has a different loading time, and I have no chance to save the 4 units. So RNG plus long retry times led to a 15-minute headache. Finally though, I got a successful run. Now I'm allowed to actually start the mission. This mission isn't an easy one either, by any means. But at least the run lives. There are constant attack waves of undead, increasing in strength for 30 minutes. The first few attacks aren't really much of a problem. My stacked events can handle them just fine. But later, there are liches and meat wagons, and a lot of things that can break my defenses that I have to be ready for. I decided to kill the caravan to put some much needed pressure off me late game. At the same time, a huge purple attack squad comes on the right, armed with a lich that can do heavy damage to buildings with death and decay, and does a lot of damage to my backline with Frost Nova. Still, I get a Scroll of Sound portal from the caravan and teleport home for a risky, albeit successful defense. I started the full turtle until the last minute. At the last minute of the mission, I abandoned ship into the bottom right corner and let the undead have my base. I don't care if they kill my entire base. I built a farm in the bottom right, so I'm not going to lose to base destruction. I did it though. I'm past the first roadblock of the run. Next mission, Arthas and Uther get a little zesty with each other, and Arthas decides to massacre an entire city. Arthas did nothing wrong, by the way. The Culling is a bit of breath of fresh air, and it's relatively simple. Kill more zombies before Mal'Ganis gets them. Mal'Ganis is kind of a nuisance, and his carrion swarm hurts my backline. Sleep is always annoying too. My advice though is to kill him as early as possible, then try to dodge and just hit villages while having defenses at home to deal with the purple undead. Higher tier upgrades are now unlocked, and the priest can now cast Inner Fire. Inner Fire grants armor to nearby units, and it can be turned on to autocast. Knights plus Inner Fire plus Devotion Aura is a really tanky combo that I'm going to be using for the rest of the human campaign. In the Shores of Northrend, it starts out as a dungeon crawler, then transitions to base versus base. Myrddin pops up, giving us a kiss on the cheek, and we're back to having two heroes. By the way, Myrddin's kit feels insanely strong to me. His hammer practically one-shots, his thunderclap does nice AoE debuff and damage, and his bash is a solid passive. Hammer plus Holy Light kinda wrecks the enemy heroes. I want to note there's some cheese for this mission too. Instead of having to fight the purple base to get to the second dwarven base, you can just have Arthas walk through, and apparently how the code works is when it sees Arthas, the dwarves are saved, and you get a free extra base at the beginning of the game, without any effort. This also checks off the optional quest, saving as many allies as possible. After getting the usual priests, knights, and riflemen, I punched the purple base out of existence. Now it's time to play with my favorite unit in the game, Siege Engines. Oh man, look at those wheels though. Dude, and that horn sound effect, bro. These guys have the tankiness of walking buildings, and oh boy do they hit hard. Green, of course, fell to the awesome might of the Siege Engines. I'm never using mortar teams again. Next mission, Arthas and Myrddin are set out to burn ships, so then Arthas can still fight Mal'Ganis. We start out with Arthas, Myrddin, and two mortar teams. I hate you. Anyways, this is a, hey, mercs exist, do you like them? Kind of mission. Pretty nice and easy though. Myrddin and Arthas are kind of an insane combo right now. The first two ships are a breeze. When you're roughly in the middle of the mission, there's the Ziggurat line of death, and I never knew this, but apparently Amulet of Recall is good, and it's at the shop right before it. Thanks Twitch chat. You can get your troops across without any of them taking damage. The next two ships are pretty easy with Myrddin and Arthas tanking, and they obliterate anyone who dared oppose the duo. Finally, the last mission of the human campaign, Frostmourne. There's no tricks, no cheeses, and no gimmicks for this mission. It's simply hard. Not impossible by any means, but your base is constantly under attack, and you have to be very good at multitasking for this mission. Try to get Arthas and Myrddin to Frostmourne as fast as possible, while building up back at home and making sure nothing dies. I didn't have the issue with the Arthas Myrddin side of things, but I did struggle at home. Still though, I did manage to defend, and I got Arthas to the vault entrance. Once Arthas acquires Frostmourne, Myrddin goes to sleep for a long time, as well as all the units that were with you. They went to sleep in a cutscene, so they don't count for the run. Once you have Arthas back, defense becomes much easier because Arthas is kinda stacked now. With Frostmourne, he does chaos damage, the best damage type in the game. I defended with Arthas while building up my army, and I decided to kill the purple base so they wouldn't attack my base while I'm pushing Mal'Ganis. I used my air units to scout when Mal'Ganis was moving out, and it gave me plenty of time to react. By the way, guerrilla warfare against undead as a paladin is ridiculously good. Every time Mal'Ganis moved out, I just walked up to him and spammed Holy Light and Divine Shield. Hopefully I won't have to deal with that combo when I'm playing undead, because it sounds really, really annoying. We pushed to the other side of the map, and with some Holy Light and Inner Fire micro, we're coming in strong, boys. We clean up the base nicely with siege engines, and that's a wrap for humans. Some tricky parts, but overall, I didn't find anything too difficult. If this pattern continues, I might actually be able to pull this off. Let's move to the undead.
What is this? What are you doing, my son?
Succeeding you, father.
For the first mission of the Undead campaign, Trudging Through the Ashes, it might just be the easiest mission for the no death run in the entire campaign. Really, all you have to do is shift-click Emo Arthas towards designated spots and recruit the Acolytes. Arthas himself is a Death Knight and has Death Coil, Death Pact, Unholy Aura, and his ultimate ability, Animate Dead. For obvious reasons, I can't use Death Pact or Animate Dead, so I'll just be leveling up the other two. We'll skip right past this mission. You know how last mission was one of the easiest missions in the entire campaign? Well, let's just say this mission has some serious contrast. In digging up the dead, we start off with Arthas, some ghouls, and the new unit, the Meat Wagon. Guess what? I hate the Meat Wagon. I hate everything the Meat Wagon has done to me. It's slow, it has low HP, effectively no armor, it's mechanical so I can't death coil it, and then honestly, it's a sin on existence. We move to the top of the map to clear through the orange bases because our main quest is to recover the King's Urn and kill all the paladins. Oh yeah, paladins. Let's see, what does every paladin have? Well, they have Holy Light that can do severe and instantaneous damage to any of my units. They have Divine Shield, allowing them to be invulnerable for minutes on end. They have Devotion Aura, that it makes my low damage ghouls do even less. Let's just say the higher level paladins are annoying. Back to the mission, after we kill the orange paladin, he's only level 2, we're introduced on how to build undead bases. Undead bases are actually really fun to build. Unlike the humans, I don't need to spend any additional time or resources on buildings after they're already in production. I start setting up my base while my ghoul army mines more lumber than I'll ever realistically need. I move a small strike force into the bottom to get some loot, and I happen to run into Death Incarnate. When all you have is a level 3 Death Knight and some ghouls, this thing is actually surprisingly scary. Regardless, I get the Golem after many a reload, and start moving out. The Seal Paladin isn't really much of a threat. He's level 4, and I'm pretty sure he mainly has Divine Shield spec, so with some micro, he's not that much of an issue to take down. I kill the Blue Paladin first try, and everything is looking smooth. But now, I have to take on a real Paladin. Uther the Lightbringer is pain. Uther hurts. Need I remind you, my only attacking units are squishy melee ghouls and meat wagons, which would literally kill my army faster than Uther's. Every time Uther holy lights one of my ghouls, I have to move them out of the way immediately because they're in one-shot territory. Uther's a maxed out paladin with everything unlocked. His holy light almost one-shots my units. He's invincible for 45 seconds, and he grants massive armor to his knights and footmen and himself. Oh, and even if I did manage to whittle them down and kill some knights, he can resurrect them all. After attempt after attempt after attempt, ghoul and ghoul slain, the tragedies, the horrors, I finally got a successful run. This took me about an hour. Might I remind you, this is the second mission of the Undead campaign. But regardless, I did it. Let's move on. For every mission so far, I've noticed a trend. Missions that are the biggest threat to the no death run are timed ones. They force you to act quick. Defense missions are also tricky. Well, this mission absolutely breaks the mold. You have infinite time to kill some bases. Sounds easy, right? Chapter 3, Into the Realm Eternal, is by far the hardest mission I've played so far on the no death run. At the beginning of the mission, we get introduced to a very powerful undead unit, the Necromancer. They can turn enemy corpses into fierce warriors to fight for their army, overwhelming defenses quickly. Good thing the skeletons have timed life and die after a short period. So instead of a powerful unit, the Necromancer is essentially an unholy frenzy bot. They are really squishy and they don't get upgraded from the graveyard. Unholy Frenzy with Arthas is alright, but he's at the level where it does a lot of damage to him. We push the first elven base into dust and start setting up base. When shop is set up and our static defense is in place, let's talk army comp. See, a problem with the undead is their playstyle. They're a quantity over quality type of race, where you mass cheap units to overwhelm the enemy. Ghouls are good cannon fodder to get some corpses generated for the Necromancer. Meat wagons can also bring corpses for a massive skeleton army. Of course, for the Deathless run, we can't use that playstyle, so essentially all we have is a level 3 Death Knight, squishy melee units, squishy ranged units, and squishy mechanical units. The enemy, alternatively, are elves. Almost all of them are ranged, and they focus fire troops who are low health. Can you see why this mission is looking so difficult? We don't have any high tier undead units, and we have to push elven bases to win the game. Let's go about how I went about doing this mission. First off, I moved to the right of the map and cleared the 2 bases there. They didn't offer much resistance. The problem comes with the last teal base and the blue base. Those are both very, very well fortified bases that can definitely kill ghouls very easily. Here's where I made my first, absolutely crucial mistake of this attempt. I went into high upkeep. Upkeep is the system where the higher supply you get, the less gold income you have. My logic was when I max out, I won't need any money to resupply because I can't lose any units. It was short-sighted to say the least. Moving on, let's look at my initial approaches to the teal base. I first tried to simply out micro. I figured if I microed absolutely perfectly, I could break the defense without losing a unit. This approach was as dumb as it sounded. No matter how hard I tried, I always lost a unit attacking the base. I tried kiting, pulling enemies with meat wagons. Regardless of what I did, a ghoul would die to focus fire, and Arthas by himself wasn't strong enough to deal with the defenses. I tried this for about 40 minutes before trying to switch tactics. If you notice, I had my meat wagons clear out some trees because I figured I could get my army in less choke points. They would better surround and would be easier to micro. It still didn't work though. However, when I cleared out the land, a thought occurred to me. That's a lot of empty real estate. How about I fight static defense with static defense? Necropolis in place, I started to AFK while I was building. That's when I ran into problem number 2. A blue strike force comes to attack me before my static defenses are in place. It's pretty scary to fight without losing a unit. It's a decent strike force, and if I leave, then I lose a lot of time and money. So I tried the out micro approach. Again, very dumb option, not smart in the slightest. Still, stubbornness goes a ways, and eventually I actually managed to kill the blue force without losing a unit. Static defense up and in place, I aggroed teal with Arthas and they ran to the towers and got killed. Teal base finally cleared out, I ran into a money problem. I wanted to try the same approach to the blue base, but I didn't have nearly enough money because I very stupidly went into high upkeep. I couldn't get the towers up quick enough before a blue strike force inevitably came and destroyed the ziggurats before a formidable line of defense could be made. Then I realized the perfect vantage point my meat wagons had. You know how I mentioned how the AI really hates siege units? You know how I really hate siege units? Well, it's time to abuse that. As soon as the meat wagons attack from the high hill, all the units start moving like it's aligned tower defense towards the meat wagons. Ignoring the tower is killing them all. With Arthas, the Kite, and Guide, I eventually managed to get a formidable defense that could solo a blue wave. After a Sylvanas attack, I struck that blue with everything I had while she was dead. Took a couple of tries, but I eventually got the blue base without losing a unit. This mission took me 3 hours to do, and it's the 3rd mission in the campaign. Regardless, with enough time, patience, and stubbornness, I did it eventually. Next mission, Key of 3 Moons, starts us off with Crit Fiends. Ranged, with medium health and armor, and good damage, these guys are a godsend. They're going to be my main fighting unit for the rest of the run. I start out with the usual, massing static defense while upgrading as much as I can. I push in the right side to get the first altar and to secure an expansion. My rule of thumb now is if I have 2+ gold mines at full operation, I can move into low upkeep. And if I have around 4,000 gold stocked up, I can move into high upkeep. After getting to 70 supply, I move out with my Crit Fiend squad to secure the middle of the map. I then max out my supply, moving to take the top middle teal altar. Man, Crit Fiends are such a good all-around unit. I wait for blue to attack my base before sending my army towards theirs, killing them pretty easily. For the final objective, getting Arthas to the gate, you don't have to take the defenses around it. All you have to do is drop Arthas off and move towards the portal, then the mission's over. In the Fall of Silvermoon, it's honestly a breath of fresh air. There's a lot of space to work with on the map, and I get introduced to gargoyles. I'm never going to use them for anything other than scouting, but scouting's very valuable. Same formula as the last mission. I got upgrades, stacked defense, and units maxed out while clearing the map of creep. I maxed out, waited for Sylvanas to attack my base, and moved to counterattack. For a high elf general, she put up a good fight, but her base didn't really. With a new unit, Banshees, that I'm also not going to use because I'm not good enough, I start moving towards the teal defense. This bridge is actually really hard to push into. It's a tight choke point that makes it difficult to micro weak units back, and the Archmage gets a lot of blizzard value with everyone clumped up. Try as I might, I couldn't crack it without losing a unit. So I resorted to a familiar tactic, bring my OP static defense to them. My meat wagon's clearing out some real estate, Necropolis up in place, I upgraded to a black citadel, then had to kill the remaining defending force. After that, and some cleaning up of the teal base, I moved on to the granite golems and killed them pretty easily. Honestly, a fun mission. Blackrock And Roll 2 is an offense mission in which you're against multiple dumb, stupid, and brain-dead orc enemies. Orcs are gross, bro. Kelsier is resurrected, and I now have access to a level 7 Lich. His ability Frost Armor is of particular interest to me to keep my units more tanky. Frost Nova is also really good for AoE damage and slowing down a group of enemies. Also, we get the coolest undead unit in the game, Frostworms. Huge, flying battalions of doom. They are very tanky, good against buildings, and have a natural slow for units they attack. After building up, the first base I decided to attack was the brown base, because for some reason they threw pretty much their entire force in my static defense, leaving themselves wide open. That's orc brains for you. Next, I decided to attack blue, because blue has one of the easier bases to crack, and I'm pretty sure you're supposed to take that one out first. After that's dealt with, the next base I attack is just going to be a counterattack to whoever attacks me. Apparently Silver wanted to be on the chopping block. Frostworms are very good at stopping enemy building resistance. Naturally, the next base I attack is orange. They're the last optional quest to kill. Red is a little bit trickier than everyone else though. They have massive dragons and a high level blade master. My approach was to pull them out of their base and fight the red army there. It worked, and after I murdered the last orc army, I moved it and cleaned up the base. Shout out to this random nightcrawler for giving me a heart attack. Mission 7 of the Undead campaign is a fun one. In the Siege of Dalaran, the main premise of the mission is that the Archmages have set up a field of destructive energy, hurting and eventually killing all undead who enter it. I get access to the Abominations, tanky, high health melee units that are the bruisers for the undead. That's nice and all, except I have very cheesy and powerful 2 heroes. Why bother sending my army in the field if my heroes can simply stroll through and spam Death Coil and Frost Nova on the Archmages, killing them faster than anything they can do against me? Sorry, Archmages. Same principles as the last 2 missions apply here. I get an army, gets a 69 supply, and move towards the human bases. Silver falls pretty easily, and I move my heroes forward to take out the second wizard. There's this little nook on the left where you can spam Death Coil and Frost Nova without the Archmage even being able to respond. Then I max out and move towards the blue base. The blue base put up a valiant effort, but I crushed through them with Frost Armor and Death Coil to support. For this last bit, it's meant to be a long walk through a field, encountering heavy resistance and having to fight with the level 10 Archmage. My heroes are a little too high level to care though. The last mission of the Undead campaign, Under the Burning Sky, is a mission that can be extremely difficult if you don't know the proper steps for dealing with it. If you try to simply turtle up, from my experience, you get overwhelmed quickly, and while it's possible, I think, with no unit deaths, it's extremely difficult. You start out with a base already well built and 3 separate points of entry around Kel'Thuzad, who you must defend for the summoning to occur. You have shades and a sizable starting forest, with another base offered to you in the bottom right. You even have 2 fountains of health and mana at the bottom for your units to heal in between fights. The reason you have all these resources is because of what the opponent has. You're against 3 human bases, all constantly sending very strong waves of attackers at you. The left human base, the Mages Guild, is mainly consistent of dwarven attackers. Riflemen, mortar teams, and the dreaded siege engines are all spawned from this base, and they constantly pummel your left defenses. The top middle base, the Kirin Tor, summons fleets of Griffin Riders with Knight Underbellies and pre-support to come in and do huge damage to buildings with the Stormhammer ability while being very tanky. The far right blue base, the Sorcerer's League, spawns a general variety of units, mainly focusing on barracks production with priest and mortar team support, attacking your right flank. This mission is to showcase a grand defense against the last bastion of hope for the humans, forcing you to defend wave after wave, showing the true might of the undead. Let's cheese this mission to the ground, shall we? The first 5 minutes of the game are very specific. What you need to do is send Arthas to the left side of the map and find these 4 crates. At the same time, build up ziggurats on your right defenses and send all of your crit fiends there. In the crates, Arthas will find 4 sets of goblin landmines. These mines have very high destructive capabilities, and you're meant to use them in some choke points and defensively to buy you some time. We're going to use them for the offense. Send Arthas to the left human base, and what you need to do is take out 4 key structures: the castle that produces human workers and gives the base income, and the 3 workshops that produces siege units. With these structures taken out, you've effectively neutered the left base from ever being a demonstrable threat. So that leaves it so you only have to focus on the right defenses and top defenses. The reason I took out the left base was because the production was the most grouped up, and late game, the amount of siege engines and mortar teams sent really break my strategy. Though, realistically, you could probably take out any of the bases. Skip forward to the 25-minute mark, and the Legion sends me some Fellhounds. Melee demons with chaos damage, they're an alright substitute for Abomination for now. But because Fellhounds don't get buffs from the graveyard, late game, I'm not going to really be using them. They're a little squishy. However, for now, their mana burn ability is really strong against the enemy Archmages, so they'll be in my force. I keep defending as usual, but now I start playing for what my late game strategy is going to be. I build necropolises in the top and right, and start upgrading them so they get the Black Citadel attack. At the 10-minute mark, the Legion starts to send me Infernals, very strong tanky units that output a ton of damage. At the 1.5-minute mark, my late game strategy comes into effect. I pull all my units in the game to the bottom left and let the humans have my base. With the Black Citadels and amount of ziggurats I have, and due to the fact the Dwarven base was shut down earlier, they have no hope of getting through all the static defense before the timer goes down. And with that, that's it for the Undead No Death run. Very weird difficulty spikes and pitfalls for the undead, with some missions being ridiculously easy, with others being the hardest I've ever played. That first Elven mission, let's just say I was a little happier than I should have been with Arthas murdering Sylvanas. Let's see if the orcs fare as well as the humans and undead next time. This video is already over 30 minutes, and I've spent too many hours to count editing it so far. I'm excited to answer the question, is it possible to beat Warcraft 3, Reign of Chaos, without losing a unit? We'll find out in a bit. See ya.
Belanora, Mordanos melar, il amor no falos cadar.